Welcome back, everybody, and welcome back to Nebraska Nightly, your source for everything Nebraska football, whether that's players, whether that's recruiting, whether that is the staff, right here on the Wilson Dittman Sports Channel. So let's break it down. Let's break down the news, and I really want to get started with this staff. So as you all know, when Matt Rhule got here, he really went ahead and hired a bunch of coordinators right off the spot, whether that was Marcus Satterfield or Ed Foley. Really went off the bat and got a bunch of guys, but for the last month, we really haven't had anybody on the wide receiver spot, at linebackers, or at tight end. And that's just been open, and we've kind of been waiting to get the news on who that was going to be. But we just recently this week got it figured out. We got two guys hired at both those positions. And, of course, we got one at tight end about 2 weeks ago. I was just kind of waiting to break that down until the coaching staff was finalized. So I really want to start off with our first hire, which is Garrett McGuire, who's coming off a stint with the Carolina Panthers. Now, this is a guy who made headlines just recently when we hired him because of the fact that he's 24 years old. He's 24 years old. He was with Matt Rhule as a player at Baylor from 2017 to 2020. And, again, he's only basically had experience coaching-wise at the Carolina Panthers as an offensive assistant. So there's reason to be concerned. A little experience whatsoever. What I'm worried about most definitely with him is the fact that he has never coached wide receivers before. When he was at Baylor and throughout his football career, he was a quarterback. He's always played quarterback. And I talked to a couple Panthers people and Panthers fans, and really what they said about him was when he was with the Panthers, he didn't really he was an offensive assistant, but mostly he was coaching the quarterbacks. So the fact that he's kind of switching up and coaching wide receivers for the first time, it concerns me a lot development-wise. However, when it comes down to recruiting, I like the hire because of the fact that I think a lot of the times recruiting, when you're about these guys' age, it's really easy to get guys on board. And I think, again, the younger you are, the more they like recruiting. They can kind of gel with these guys, with these kids who are, about as old as they are. And again, they really take a passionate approach to recruiting. So for that instance, I like the hire. I don't love the hire. I rated it a C, but I'm not going to discount this hire just because of the fact that he has little experience. I think he has something to add, but again, there's reason to be concerned. There's reason to be concerned. On to the second hire. Again, another Panthers guy. We got Rob Dvorak from the Panthers, a guy with, again, little experience, 28 years old. He was with Rhule as a player at Temple and then kind of just following him along the way, whether that was at Baylor and then obviously with the Panthers. The only time he's really coached a position group was at Lehigh for 1 year. He was coaching the linebackers there, but only 1 year. Then he rejoined Rhule in Carolina as a defensive assistant. So, again, another guy with little experience, but another young guy who let me just tell you this. It's impressive that they're even at this position at this young of an age. I'll say that. And I think a lot of times, I'll give you an example. When Scott Frost got here, his staff was mostly 40, 50-year-olds, and they didn't really have a passionate approach to recruiting. This 2023 class would have failed if Frost was still here. A lot of times, again, these younger coaches, they care about recruiting. They like working with kids. So for that instance, I think Rob Dvorak could probably work as if, again, he has to be passionate. He has to be passionate, and that's hard to tell, and it's hard for me to analyze. Again, he's never coached really college football on a large scale. So it's hard for me to sit here and analyze that he's going to be a good recruiter or he's not going to be a recruiter. But just from the fact that he's young and he's already climbed the ranks this early in his career, that gives me hope that he's going to be a solid, at least recruiter here. But I also think he could be a solid development coach. But again, we have to wait and see on that. So again, both those hires, again, little experience, but guys who are young and guys who can be passionate. And really what Matt Rhule said, and Matt Rhule said this throughout his time here in Nebraska really early on, he said he's looking for young coaches who are going to set a culture by their behavior and by their actions. They're going to be the first one in, last one out, and they're going to work effortlessly hard to get this train back on the track. So for that incident only, I trust Rhule. I trust what he's doing, and let's move on to what my opinion is one of the better hires of this offseason, which is Bob Wager. So we hired Bob Wager from a high school in Texas, Martin High School. He was head coaching there for 17 years, and they made the playoffs every year that he was there. Again, I don't follow Texas high school football that much at all, if any. But from what I've talked to some people who are fans, and some even a little reporters have said stuff about Wager, and they only speak kind words and good words about him. Again, good person on and off the field, and he's always been a solid head coach when he was there in Texas. And really, what I'm focused on this hire is the fact that it, again, opens a door recruiting-wise into Texas. And we already have that with Rule. We already have that with some other guys on the staff. Evan Cooper, another example. But if anything, this furthers it. This is a guy who, again, just recently was coaching high school football. He was also around a lot of camps in Texas, a lot of rivals camps. So he has connections with a lot of the top prospects, a lot of the top high schools, a lot of the top coaches. That is only good news for Nebraska. Only good news. So it only deepens that connection. So this is a really solid hire. I really like that. But before we move on, again, I want to go back to Garrett McGuire and Rob Dvorak, our new wide receiver and linebacker coaches. Again, I tell you all, just don't stress about it. You know, at this point in time, there's nothing we can do. And again, in a year, and if they're not producing development-wise, and they're not producing on the recruiting trail, then we could start to worry. But I feel pretty confident about it. Again, the fact that they're this young and they're in this position, I think that speaks volumes. The only thing that I'd say that I'm mad about when it comes to Rule, when it comes to these coaches and these assistants, is the fact that Trev handed him, he said, hey, you have an $8 million check. You could spend it on your entire assistants. All right, here you go. And in my opinion, I do not think Matt Rule cracked $5 million of that $8 million. Again, the numbers aren't out yet, but when they are, I'm pretty confident that it won't be more than $5 million. If anything, $6 million. So that does worry me. I think I really wanted to get the best staff money could buy, and is this the best staff money could buy? No, I'd rate it probably a B. And I think I really like Tony White. I really like Evan Cooper. I really like Marcus Satterfield. I think the coordinators are really good, but again, a lot of these position coaches don't have that much experience. Still a B though. That's an admirable grade. He didn't really get the best staff money could buy, but again, I still trust him. I still think it's going to work. But that's, again, the only reason for concern there is I think there's a couple guys that we could have got. I don't want to name names. I already talked about them in other episodes that had a little more experience that could have been a little better hire, but that's fine. But yeah, and again, I want to just go over this entire staff really quickly and just a couple words about all these guys. Obviously, Marcus Satterfield, who spoke with the media today and got the fans a little riled up. He basically said how we're going to go and we're going to run the ball. We're going to bring back the tight ends. We're going to bring back the fullbacks. And everybody was losing their mind. Oh my gosh, we're bringing back the fullback, which, Nebraska fans are going to do every time they hear about the fullback. But again, I like the hire. I really liked his offense at South Carolina. I didn't love his offense at South Carolina, but I like that he's young, he's innovative. And I think a lot of the fact is that I think Shane Beamer was kind of holding him back as a coordinator at South Carolina. So I think he's a really good hire. I really want to talk about Tony White really quickly. He's our defensive coordinator from Syracuse. I was reading a little bit more about him. Of course, he runs a 3-3-5, which we'll get into throughout the offseason. But Syracuse did not want him to go by any means. They thought this guy was the crown jewel of their assistant pool. Dino Babers loved him. He ran the entire defense. Babers ran the team, but he ran the defense completely. Babers had no influence on, and obviously Babers being the head coach of Syracuse, if you didn't know, he had no influence over the defense. Tony White was just took command. There's a story that I read about where Tony White basically he went up to a 4-star recruit at Syracuse and said, "Hey, look at you. You're so talented. And then, look at this walk-on. He's not as talented as you. He's not as privileged as you. And yet he's coming to practice every day and working harder and working his butt off compared to you." And again, he's not afraid to get in your face. And that's what I really like about him. I think he's going to be a really good coach here. And that was probably the best hire, without a doubt. Special teams coordinator, Ed Foley. Really like the hire, getting experience, been with Rule before. That's all you need there. EJ Barthel, love this hire. UConn did not want to lose him. He was a really good hire. Again, you look at UConn stats running wise, just gotten better every single year Barthel was there. And the reason why AJ Allen is still will be in a Nebraska uniform next fall is because of EJ Barthel. So really like him. He's already made a strong impression. Donovan Raiola, again, I already talked about him. I don't love that he's coming back, but if he gives us a chance to get Dylan Raiola, all is forgiven. Terrence Knighton is our defensive line coach. I didn't really, again, another guy, young, without too much experience. However, I like the fact that he's already kind of making some positive impressions on the recruiting trail. I recognize the name because he was in the NFL a couple years ago. It was actually a pretty good defensive tackle. But, again, another guy without experience, but we'll see what happens there. And then Evan Cooper in the secondary. I love this hire. Absolutely love this hire. Matt Rhule speaks very highly of Evan Cooper. He says Evan Cooper is the hardest recruiter that he's ever known, hardest working recruiter. He's always, texting Rhule, guys Rhule's never heard of, but Evan Cooper's always watching film, always working hard. And I, again, love this hire, love Evan Cooper. So really wanted to just go over the staff there, break it down for you. Of course, the staff is now finalized, so that is good news for everybody. So there you go on the staff. Let's get into what I think is a lot more interesting, or not a lot more interesting, but a little more relevant information, the transfers. And I know you guys want to hear about those. So we have a couple of guys visiting this weekend that I want to break down for you guys. So first off is Walter Rousey from Stanford. He's a tackle, and he has started every single game there since 2019. I mean, this is a really, really big human being, massive human being, and he's a stud. You look at his film, you look at his stats, you look at his physique. My goodness, I would go on a limb right now and say Walter Rousey is the biggest get that we could possibly have in this class, transfer-wise. A massive human being. I watched an interview of him at Stanford. Again, a guy who speaks really well, does all the right things. He's active in the community when he was at Stanford. I mean, he is going to be a beast if he comes here. I think he only has 1 year of eligibility left, which is fine. We don't. I assume we won't need him more than that. But again, really like him. And I want to go back to him later on in the episode. Billy Kemp is another guy here. He's a wide receiver from Virginia. I want to bring up his stats really quick here. I had him. So one thing I really like about Billy Kemp is that, here they are. So he's not only experienced as a wide receiver. He has about 2,000 yards on his career, 10th most in UVA history, and 8 touchdowns in his career. But he's also an experienced punt returner. Again, a guy who really was everywhere on the field for Virginia. I was watching his film earlier, and he's a guy who I don't want to compare him to him, but I am. He reminds me of Wan'Dale Robinson. A lot of the ways that Satterfield used him. A lot of options, a lot of jet sweeps, a lot of comeback routes, a lot of short little routes. They were just trying to get the ball in his hands. Really explosive after the catch. Again, he's only 5'9" as a wide receiver, but again, I when I was watching him, I just thought of Wan'Dale Robinson, just the way that they used him. Again, a lot of screens, a lot of design looks, how to get the ball in his hands. That's what they were trying to do there at Virginia. So I like him a lot, and I think we might get him if we go after him. Last but not least, Micah Mazuka, who is a transfer from Baylor. He was a guard there, and he was only a first-time starter in 2020. I think he has 2 years of eligibility left. And really, he's been the one that's kind of making a lot of fuss in the Nebraska fan base. Is that he, at one point in time, apparently according to PFF, he was a sixth best graded guard in the country last year. So a lot of fans really were like, "Oh my goodness, wow, this guy's legit." I watched this film. He is a body mover. I mean, big guy, and you can see why he's as coveted as he is. The only thing I'd say about him, and again, he's 6'6", 300 pounds. The only thing I'd say about him that I am a little bit worried about is the last 2 games he was at Baylor, he didn't play. Not sure the last 2 regular season games they were. I talked to a Baylor fan about it. Again, no one knows why he just kind of sat out of those games. Not sure if it was because he was going to transfer or some character issues. I don't know, or something that maybe he was suspended and that's the reason why he transferred. I couldn't tell you, but that is something that was a little concerning about that. But again, really big transfers there. I want to quickly check if there's any other that I missed. Let's see if there's any here. So 2 for 7 has nobody. And let's check rivals really quick here. So yeah, none of the sites are updated, but those are 3 guys that are going to be here in Lincoln for sure. If there's any others that I might have missed, I'll report them for you here on the Wilson Dittman Sports Channel. So that's the transfers. Again, I really like them. I want to go again. I said I was going to go back to Walter Rousey, but Walter Rousey is the big 2 for me. Not only excellence on the field, he was Stanford's best O lineman since 2020, is from what a Stanford guy told me. Or not told me, but I mean, what I saw. Again, they really like him. He was all Pac-12 honorable mention. He's freshman All-American, academic honor roll. I mean, this is a guy who has kind of always been one of the better players in the Pac-12 and on the Stanford team. But he really does off the field as well. He's a guy who just a good leader. And from everything I've seen, again, I watched a YouTube video where he was being an active member of the community and having an interview. Really soft-spoken guy. I think that would be a massive get. So really want to talk about this transfer for you. And let's talk about the commits really quick. So I did predict these commits on my last episode, but I didn't really predict them. I mean, they were written in stone. Ethan Nation and Cameron Lenhardt committed on January 3rd at the Under Armour All-American game. And both of them had a really good day, especially Ethan Nation. He had a really good day. But of course, both of them, Ethan Nation being a 3-star cornerback and 4-star, and Cameron Lenhardt being a 4-star defensive end. Both really big gets. I don't really want to break them down. I break them down last video, but both really explosive players. Ethan Nation, a little bit of a smaller cornerback, but he can make plays. Really gritty player, and he's fast, man. He is fast. And Cameron Lenhardt, again, he's speedy, quick as well on the line of scrimmage. I really liked him at IMG Academy. So again, I loved both of those gets. So that's basically the news. I wanted to quickly mention a couple other things that have been floating around Nebraska land. First off, Xavier Betts, you might remember the name. He entered the portal. So when did he get kicked off the team? It was last offseason in 2021. So he wasn't playing college football. He wasn't enrolled in UNL. I thought that was really interesting that he put his name in the transfer portal right now. I think, you might have heard some rumors about Xavier Betts. It's kind of unfortunate to see where his life has went. He was working at a Walmart in Bellevue recently. He's not in school. So I think a lot of Nebraska fans are wishing him well. Honestly, I think he just needs some leadership and mentorship in his life, and I think it'd be good for him to go back to school. And hopefully he gets the opportunity, and I'm rooting for him. Another one, Daniel Kalen, who's a 4-star quarterback from Nebraska for the class of 2024. He picked up an offer from Colorado. That's something to watch. I don't think we'll pick up Daniel Kalen just for the reason I think we're going to get Dylan Raiola. So the fact that he might go to Colorado and Deion Sanders is trying to put a foothold a little bit in Nebraska is something to look at. Again, Deion Sanders was going after Malachi Coleman too the second he got here. So the second he got at Colorado. So they might be trying to poach a couple of our guys in Nebraska, and that's something to watch in future classes. I think they also recently offered Devon Hall. I could be wrong, but yeah, that's another thing to watch there. And last but not least, Anthony Grant. Good news here. He is coming back for a second season here at Nebraska. I think it's his 5th or 6th year in college, but it's nice to add him into this running back room. Personally, I just want to. I don't want to have a spoiler for some of my takes coming in the offseason when we start to break down this roster a little bit more. I don't think he's going to be running back 1. I think that's going to be A.J. Allen, but I think he still provides you a lot of athleticism and a lot of he is very patient as a back. It didn't really help him this year because our O-line was as bad as it was, but I think he's a really smart back, and if we get an improved O-line, he can make a big difference behind the tackles. So really good news there. And that about wraps it up, wraps up my notes for this video. So thank you guys all for watching. Again, this is Nebraska Nightly. We're making videos about every Friday. So come back here to the Wilson Dittman Sports Channel. Please like, please subscribe. It really helps me out to see if you guys like the content, and really trying to pump out some content for you guys. And I really like talking about Nebraska football. So again, subscribe, like if you like this video, and we will be back next Friday for some more Nebraska Nightly, talking about everything Nebraska football, more visits, more recruits, everything going on with Nebraska. So see you then.